Good afternoon and welcome to the April 19th, 2021 Governing Board Study Session. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Before we start our first item, there is some background information. I think that it would be helpful to hear from our council. And so to do that, I would like to move that we move into an executive session. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Ripley. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Okay, it looks like it was Ms. Garcia. I'm not sure if you voted or not, but it looked like the other four members voted. So I'm not sure if you abstained. So what we're going to do is, Andrea, if you could send out a separate link, and then the board members and council will sign in through the new link, and then we'll come back to this link, and you'll just have to wait a few minutes. Everyone, we appreciate your patience.
I just sent that to everyone.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I'd take this opportunity to tell a joke or two, but I don't think that's a good idea. So I really don't have very many good
We
jokes.
are,
Anybody else?
we are live on YouTube. Jim, we are live on YouTube.
Oh, you are? Okay, sorry.
I've paused the recording, but the stream is still live on YouTube.
Okay, thanks. So I won't try to have any humor in here.
Okay, we're coming back now. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we're just waiting for a few of the board members to join back through the link.
I'm resending the links.
Thank you very much, Andrea. We're just waiting for 2 board members to return, and then we will start the meeting. Andrea, could you try calling them?
That's what I'm doing now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm not getting an answer on either one.
Okay, what would the pleasure of the board be? Should we begin and then continue to try to reach them? Chancellor Lambert, are we going to stick to the current agenda, or do you want to move any of these items into a different order, or is this, you comfortable with this, or what is the?
So, Mr. Chair, the first 2 items are the most important items at the moment.
Okay.
So I would like to just move with those first 2 items, and then if you'd like to revisit 2.3, be glad to do so.
Okay.
Remember, the presentation is being recorded, so if for some reason they cannot sign back on, they can always view it at a later date and time.
And it's being live streamed on our
Yes.
the YouTube channel. Okay, so if everybody's, Ms. Ripley, do you have a thought? Oh, no, okay. Is everybody's comfortable with us moving forward then? Okay, then let's go ahead and call the meeting back to order, and we'll begin with 2.1, our educational programs and plans to support career pathways. Chancellor Lambert.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're excited to be able to share with you the education programs and the career pathways that we've been working on that's really tied to our centers of excellence, especially in the building construction technology area that integrates the virtual living lab, the data analytics certifications, and the comprehensive integrated energy management program that you'll get a chance to hear a little bit later. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg, because Greg's going to get us started. Greg?
Dean Wilson, you are muted.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chancellor Lambert, Chairperson Klinko, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, guests. Thank you for this opportunity. I am going to share my screen. And for some reason, I'm having a little bit of difficulty. It was all ready to go, too.
So you are sharing your desktop currently.
Okay. Here we go. All right. David, can you see that okay?
We can see it.
All right. Well, I will turn it over to President of Campuses, Dr. David Torre, to get us started.
Thank you, Greg. And good afternoon, Chair Klinko, members of the Board of Governors, and colleagues and guests, Chancellor Lambert. So I want to give some context for the presentations to follow, putting it in the context of the living labs and our centers of excellence. Could you go to that next slide, Greg? So next one. So the living learning laboratory concept is directly aligned to our centers of excellence. And just as a reminder, the centers of excellence combine industry standards and thought leadership, partnerships with K-12, post-secondary institutions, and then student engagement with industry is a very important component. World-class instruction, comprehensive workforce development, really looking at training from degrees to lifelong learning, and multiple on-ramps, integration of credit, non-credit, and then recognized credentials, industry credentials and certifications are key components. And then, of course, cutting-edge facilities and equipment. And so the living labs are a component of our more comprehensive approach in addressing the skills gap and our role in economic recovery and the reskilling and upskilling of our local workforce, not only as a result of the pandemic, but Industry 4.0. You know, and for example, Pima, we recently announced that we graduated our first autonomous truck driver program graduate. And this was a result of our partnership and collaboration with Too Simple. And this is the first graduate in the nation of such a certificate. And so what I want to do is then give you some examples of some of the living labs that we've already created at our campuses. So, you know, first, in terms of the photo on the top left is of our Information Technology and Cybersecurity Center. And this includes the student-run data center, the Cybersecurity Operations Center, and the live cyber warfare range. And we've also developed at the East Campus a fusion space where we can then bring industry and students in. And, you know, for example, we recently collaborated with this center with the political science department in their course on counterterrorism to demonstrate the role of cybersecurity in counterterrorism. And then we also have the makerspace, the science makerspace at East Campus. And then the next photo on the top right is our newly acquired food truck. And this is an example of a living learning lab as well. And that lab is going to be able to really travel to all of our campuses and allow students to get that hands-on. And then, you know, in our health professions, instructors have already been integrating augmented reality and simulation mannequins into the learning experience. And at West Campus, we are planning to establish a 16-bay simulation center. And that's not only going to be able to be used by our students, but by our healthcare hospitals and professionals partnering for continuing education as well. And so that just gives you a bit of an example of where we're going. And so in applied technology, the flexible industry training lab, that's going to train workforce on the latest advanced manufacturing equipment. And of course, the things that we're doing in our new automotive center are also all that kind of examples of this living lab. And so now Greg is going to specifically talk about our plans for a living lab in building and construction. So I'll pass it on to you, Greg.
Thank you, David. Everyone, you can see the next slide. We want to provide everyone with just a little bit of context with regard to our building and construction program, and then get into the specifics of HVAC, which is one of the pathways within building and construction, and just kind of share just where the idea came from in terms of what the faculty would like our students to be able to learn. And I will turn it over soon to Patrick Lawless, who is the department head for building and construction. But we have several members of the building and construction team, including several adjunct faculty members who currently work in the HVAC industry. One of the other aspects of what we are trying to do with the building and construction program, you've heard us mention many times about wrapping around industry credentials. And so the data analysis certification that Train and NC3 have partnered on it will be a big part of what we want to do going forward. And this builds on top of the foundation that the building and construction program has already started with NCCER, another accrediting body in the construction curriculum industry. So we don't ever really settle on one thing. Just like our equipment, we like to have different certifications, and Train's data analysis is one of those. In fact, also share some student perspective. As David mentioned, the workforce development piece is very important to us. When you think about all of the partnerships, specifically, Train already has an ongoing partnership with JTED and the high schools in Southern Arizona. And so as we do in other programs, when it comes to dual enrollment and working with JTED and the high schools, we always like to build and take students to the next level or two. And so that's part of what we are looking at with this development for the program. And of course, as David mentioned, our Center of Excellence will be a community hub. As we look at developing the workforce, there's also the work-based learning piece where we can train students or have them take on internships or apprenticeships, whether that's with Bill Ward in the facility or with local employers. And quickly, for those of you who don't know, building and construction, in the semesters leading up to the pandemic, we have about 350 unique students each semester, 4 full-time faculty, 2 lab staff members, and 12 plus adjunct faculty members, depending on the semester. And as I mentioned, Brian, Andre, and Jim are here with us this afternoon. Again, some of the certificates and certifications that we offer, NCCER, OSHA, NC3 would be one of those, as well as EPA. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Patrick Lawless, who is the department head for building and construction and can kind of frame the plans that we have.
Good afternoon, everybody. A few years ago, we were, the BCT team was talking about how our program is really based in residential, and that there's a lot of opportunity in commercial and industrial HVAC. By chance, I went to a conference in New York City, the American Institute of Architects, and it was more about architecture and building and sustainability and things like that. And I took a tour of the roof of the Jacob Javits Center, where they have, you can see this green grass up here, and they have bees and they have bats and they have ways to feed birds. And so it's like another whole ecosystem up there. But what caught my eye were these giant variable air volume air conditioning units. There were 90 of them up there, ranging from 6 tons to 60 tons. And so whenever I got an opportunity to ask a question on the tour, I asked a question about the air conditioners. And so the tour guide, who also happened to be the building engineer, asked me if I wanted to see their control room when the tour was over. And so I did. After the tour broke up, I went down to the control room with them. If you could go to the next slide, Greg. So in this control room, they had a number of people with these video monitors, and they're doing a continuous evaluation of the building as far as comfort goes, as far as energy consumption. And they're using all of these different data points from all over. I think it's, don't quote me, but I think it's 2 million square feet of conference space. And they had this team there. And they also told me that they had just hired a software engineer away from one of the big companies to help them develop these interfaces, these dashboards, and to help them decide how to collect this data in the building. And I just thought this was amazing. And I, after talking with the engineer there, he said that, you know, moving forward, anybody who is going to be working in building engineering is going to need to know how to operate this equipment and how to do this analysis and things like that. And so when I came back and I told the BCT team about this, we all decided that, you know, this was a great way to go. And we started looking into it. We had a trainer in our lab that was, it was old technology, and it was very cumbersome to use. And by the time we got it up and running, it was even older technology. And so, you know, a company in town helped us get that up and running. But when we saw the potential in working with NC3, we sort of abandoned that and really wanted to move forward with some real world technology that our students could really get something out of. And we know that in itself, this training is not, they're not going to jump out of Pima College and into a job, but this is certainly a technology that is going to be necessary for people who are graduating with certificates and degrees, and it will definitely help them to get a job, and it will definitely help them in their apprenticeship programs, and it will definitely be a one step up from any other type of HVAC training. Can you go to the next slide there? So this is just an idea of the type of interfaces that they were using. You could see that a lot of the equipment is numbered there. They could click on any of those numbers. They could bring up the information. They can adjust it for, you know, the occupancy of the different rooms and things like that. It was really very impressive. And this was in 2018. Now we're in 2021, and this is old technology. And so working with you know, a company like Trane or NC3, with the technology changing so quickly, it would really be to our advantage to be able to move along with that technology as it changes. Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick. And before we go on, I think if I could just maybe talk to Brian, if you could share a little bit about your background. Brian Ash is one of our adjunct faculty members in building and construction, but he has in this case, a particularly pertinent background when it comes to HVAC and control systems. Brian, can you share a little bit about your thoughts about us going in this direction?
Absolutely. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, you're loud.
All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for having this meeting and allowing us to explain and explore our opportunities here. quickly, I'll start with, I went to a vocational school for high school, and I lived basically the collaboration with the outside entities. And so the path of getting into the high schools and possibly junior highs with JTED and so forth, I believe is of the utmost importance, and it works. It simply works. I have an HVAC background coming through electronics, and took a short time off for the Marine Corps, and having worked with a lot of veterans, where I'm going with this is the experience that I've had in controls and what it allows for, as far as an opportunity for us as the premier college here in our entire area, is to diversify our program, BCT in particular, and I feel HVAC especially. I myself have a disabled veteran daughter, and to see what the online and electronic DDC type of interaction and human interface does for folks like that, I think for our program immediately, it will allow for diversity, give us a wider range of the type and caliber of students that we're working with, because we can also collaborate with the cybersecurity department. That is also something that comes into HVAC because of the different entities that we're working with. It's not like we're running a bank, but we do have proprietary and secretive information that we want to keep to ourselves as far as how we run our buildings and so forth. But the living lab idea, which I've spoken to the chancellor about, as well as a number of entities here in town, contractors, what we would be allowing the students to do is to take things from different industries that, specifically, I spoke to an individual the other day, he's in a wheelchair, and got really, really excited about the opportunity that he could actually facilitate his dreams as an HVAC tech, doing this type of variety of work, where most of what he's going to be doing is going to be computer related. He's going to be on a laptop and can also work remotely. There's a number of folks. Banner has a remote operations center that technicians from Tucson are actually operating and fixing equipment in Colorado, and a number of other places in the state. And I really believe that this is going to catapult our institution. To be honest with you, and I'm sure some of the other adjuncts can concur, we will be it. The only other places or institutions that you can find this type of education, whether it's certificates, whether it is just CEUs for upgrading, getting a certificate for a certain class that we're offering, which we have a number of. I just think that it will boost our program tremendously. And we would be probably one of 3 or 4 non-proprietary places in the country that are teaching this type of information that basically brings IT, HVAC, and the health industries all together. And it can only go up from here. I truly believe that. And I know we have the staff and the individuals are so passionate about it, and we're just waiting for that chance.
Thank you, Brian. As Brian mentioned, this skill set for our students actually crosses several divisions. And one of the building blocks that we would like to add, as mentioned previously, is the data analytics certification offered in partnership from Train and NC3. Within the college, Jim Russell, one of our building and construction faculty members, is so far the only one to have gone through training, part 1 of what will be 5 pieces of training, or 5 levels, I should say. And I just wanted Jim to mention quickly, and just so you know, Jim has 30+ years experience in the commercial HVAC industry here in Southern Arizona. Jim, can you share just a little bit about the certification before we pass the baton?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
You're good.
When I first went into this course of data analytics, I really didn't know what to expect. And as I studied this course, it was given in conjunction with NC3 and Train. I started to realize how much data is analyzed every day in this country, from what we do here at the college to, as Dean Gregg said, I worked in the refrigeration trade for many years. And just thinking about how people analyze their electric bills, their sales, their customer base. This industry crosses, or data analytics crosses virtually every industry, including the college here, where we have to determine our completion rate with students, enrollment rates, all that. That's all data that has to be analyzed. And with data analytics, you go in and use software to analyze your data. When you have an Excel spreadsheet that's 50,000 lines long and 30, 40 columns wide, to do that by hand is virtually impossible. You would go with a program like Tableau or something, pick out the parameters you want to analyze, and the software will begin the analyzing for you. So this is going to be a huge program for the college, for our local economy and jobs. That it's happening everywhere, and it's a great chance for us to help our students in the local area.
Thank you, Jim. And just before I pass it off, as I mentioned last Wednesday during the board session, we are looking to partner with the other divisions where this comes into play, because again, this is an intro level to analyzing data. We're looking forward to working with Bill's team so that our students are able to tap into the building and actually see data and make decisions, which is just going to prepare them, whether it's an internship or an apprenticeship, before they go out into industry. They will have done it with us for real, so they will be experienced. And then last but not least, Jim touched on it and Brian touched on it. Our goal is to be a center of excellence across the country. And so when you think about either the FIT lab or what we're going to do in the BCT lab, our goal is to attract students from across the country, which will in turn then attract more business to this area, knowing that they have a pool of skilled workforce readily available. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Bill Ward.
Thank you, Greg and team and David. If you guys could go to the next slide for me. So I want to tell you a little bit about the Center of Excellence project that the board approved some time ago as part of the Educational and Facilities Master Plan. And also too, when we went out and selected our design team, just to let you guys know, this project in a sense has already been designed. And so to tie to what Greg and Dave and their teams have talked about, to kind of give you guys an idea. So the Downtown Campus Energy Lab is part of the COE master plan. The proposal integrates the ST building with the lab so that the students can study these two buildings as part of the energy lab. The ST building construction cost is around $4.5 million. The ST West is about 21,000 square feet, and the ST East is 12,300 square feet. The budget related to this project will be requested because right now we can't, as you know, we're building the advanced manufacturing facility and we really can't do anything until we can move people. So we're in plans of getting that going. And so to give you guys a little knowledge too about what the change is here is that, and I know Greg and his team will really be, excited to hear this, and the rest of this group may not even realize, but when it relates to their HVAC training and controls training and things like that, they only occupy a tiny little spot in a building, probably no more than a cubicle. And I hate to say that. And that's what Greg and his team have been utilizing for years. with this project that we're doing at the ST building, we're going to give them increase their footprint to about 3,274 square feet. And within that square footage that we increase, the energy lab is going to be about 550 square feet, which is a major jump from where we were. I mean, the teams have been working, I think they've been doing a great job, but when it relates to what they've had to train on and utilize, it's, you know, I mean, this is way before, more than what we've been doing or been utilizing in the past. I have worked with Greg throughout the years to where anytime we have students that are interested in coming and working at facilities, and I know Greg and working with workforce development, we've had a few apprentices or students that actually have got to come out and actually work side by side with the facilities team to get hours in the field. And so this is a very exciting, in my opinion, this kind of completes, in a sense, what we're doing at the downtown campus. This will be the last facility to be worked on. It's not just HVAC, but this was the major focus of today's presentation. And so I don't know whether we're going to take any questions or not, or if we're just going to move into the next phase.
Are there any questions from the board?
I have one.
Yes, go ahead.
This is directed to Dave Doré. Dave, with the presentations that have just been presented, does this meet all of your needs?
So board member Garcia, I think what we're focused on from the academic side is really the living learning lab, so that our students will have access to these living learning labs.
It looks really good, though. I got to say that. I'm impressed with that, with the presentation that was given.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg, next slide. Unless there's other questions, I'm sorry.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Ripley.
Hi, yes. Thank you so much for this presentation. This is really important to myself, for one, as a board member, but also as a board member, before we move on, I want to commend all of those involved at Pima for the efforts, the research, the analysis, and really the passion and concern to prepare students for the real world and real training and real jobs. One of the things, I just want to bring this up, really, we can have another meeting on this at some other point, but one of the things that I wanted to plant is, I also believe that Arizona is arguably one of the most important places in the country, and one of our most imminent, crucial issues that we face today is climate change. And so one of my questions to just think about is, I would love to see the beginning of integrating logically the training and education of the use of sustainable energy, the smart use of resources, et cetera, whether it's through our solar panels, electric and hybrid cars, for instance, in the automotive center, agriculture, healthcare, et cetera. So I think that especially this generation of students, climate change, sustainable energy, all of this, I think, could really be easily integrated into all of the things that you're doing. And it really is, if we want this to be our premier center of excellence example for the country, I think that it would be important to not leave that out. Thanks.
Totally agree, board member Ripley. And one of the things I would say too, to tie to is that is the world of today. It's no longer just going out and working on a unit. It's now real-time data. It's to be able to, these systems that we talk about, like these energy management systems, they run everything from your lighting to your equipment. Nowadays, they can even send notifications or work orders to people in the field. And so you're so right. I mean, one of the things for me, and I'll move on, is when I first moved to Arizona 21 years ago, I'm originally from Florida, and I was a high voltage electrician who transferred into air conditioning and was fortunate to have an institution send me all over the country. But part of my degree when I got into air conditioning was I learned about solar. This was a long time ago, so we don't need to go into that. But I was baffled when I came to Arizona and noticed that 21 years ago, there was no solar. And so I totally agree with you. This is all integrated now. It has to be.
And board member Ripley, yeah, and this is so important, not just to the sustainability concept, not just to this center of excellence, but all of our centers of excellence, and that our students have that access to really the state-of-the-art equipment in the industry.
So, Kat, what you're seeing here is a key step to that total integration you're referring to. And then when you look at greenhouse gas emission, the single biggest offender are our buildings. And so this is a great place to lead from, but it's only the beginning. And we're going to be working with the city and the mayor to integrate their plans with our plans. So this is going to lead to such a much bigger piece, and we're going to become a model showcase, not just for our community, but for many other communities as well. So, Mr. Chair, we are ready to transition to the next presentation.
Okay, let's move on to 2.2, the Comprehensive Integrated Energy Management Program.
So I'm going to have Bill intro this presentation. So Bill.
Yes, thank you, Chancellor. So I'd like to introduce Jim Knudsen, the Director of Integrated Solutions for Trane Technologies, and his team. Jim and his team have been out here for a good while, auditing our systems, and you'll get to see some of that work, plus what they found and what the recommendations are. Take it over, Jim.
Thank you so much. Just want to double check. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. It is such a pleasure to represent our team. We've got some other team members with us today. We'll go into introductions as they come up, if they're needed to answer questions. But it's been truly a pleasure. And not only that, but a very interesting challenge to take the foundation that Pima Community College has built already. And not only from Dr. Lambert's leadership and getting the things turned around over the last few years, but just the solar that Bill and his team have developed. The facilities you've got a wide variety of systems. Obviously, there's a lot of improvements. Some of those buildings are aging. The need for improvements in the technology aspect of coming up to speed in new technology. But the other thing that you have built, which is really impressive, is the staff that Greg and his team and David Duray and the team have built to take this and turn it into learning for kids. So the foundation of all of the systems that you have, and to be able to hopefully will be allowed to move forward and to save energy and repurpose those dollars in a way that's going to create learning opportunities, as well as improve the environment and reduce the carbon footprint. And so I'm excited to get into a few slides. I'll try not to take too much time. I've been accused of talking too much before, so I'll try not to do that. So anyway, next slide, please. This is a pretty rough slide, but I think what you will find is that the meaning of it is pretty just really transformative for the college. We have found a way to improve your facilities and upgrade systems that will create $863,000 of energy savings that will be guaranteed by Trane, that will result in being able to repurpose over $15 million of energy costs that would go to the utility. Instead, we're going to turn that into upgrades, deferred maintenance enhancements, technology, and then duplicate that whole system for students to learn from. So this is kind of just in the red slot part of it is really the ongoing utility costs. In the green and the yellow or orange is the savings that is going to be reduced through this project. But the green is the cost of the program over time if you divide it out over a few years. Next slide. So we're very pleased and blessed to be selected by your team to help you with this project. And as the RFP requested and the expectations, it's on the left side. So this is a really busy slide, and I hate those because I don't want to have too many words. So I won't read it, but I think you can probably see as I just bring out a couple of highlights here, is that there's a lot of systems, and it's really hard when you're in an organization that is just trying to keep things going on a day-to-day basis to come up with money to replace systems that are aging over 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And so you almost have to draw a line in the sand. And so what we feel like is this is the opportunity for Pima Community College to really take a new, fresh approach at making major replacements, completely upgrading the entire building automation system that Patrick Lovelace did a great job of explaining how important that is. The intelligent solutions aspects of millions of data points annually, instead of, just a limited number of utility bill data information, we literally can give you hundreds of millions of data points that can be used in a good way. It's not what they call DRIP, which is data rich, information poor. It's actually usable data that's filtered through the analytics programs that Jim Russell did a nice job of explaining. So that data then comes back to the college to be used in a number of ways. One, for Bill and his team to be able to really do a great job of analyzing systems, but also to be able to use that data and duplicating it for students. So these items on this slide are really the things that are integrated in addition to the basics that we asked for. And I'm gonna let you just kind of go through some of those, but Dr. Ripley, I wanted to just mention that as you can see here, this on the second item on the right side, it says our grid solutions and renewable energy and power solutions group, it's called TREPS, engage in the energy master plan and climate action planning process. So working with the community, and we just supplied a $7 million supported a grant with Northern Arizona University to get dollars for microgrids and vehicle charging, battery storage. They call them distributed energy resources. We're doing these around the world in our federal team. And it's really an exciting opportunity for students to take all of these systems and pull it into their learning environment, as well as use it for the facilities team and for your energy planning teams. And we're really excited about working with you to get a climate action plan going, because this is the fundamental that if you don't have data, it's really hard to use that to move forward. So I think that's enough description there, but I just wanted to kind of highlight that is definitely what we plan to do as we move forward with this project. Just a couple of real highlight items here, but budget neutral is important. We want to make sure that these programs will self-fund, and we've come up with a program that does that, as that first slide mentioned. Campus-wide system. It's really hard to do piecemeal, and sometimes that's what you're forced to do, but we feel like this is a time to really, like I said, draw a line in the sand and make it a campus-wide improvement of lighting and controls and other mechanical upgrades. And a strong foundation for integrated education facilities, training programs, not only for the students, but also for your workforce, and create the workforce of the future. One of the things that I think is always a concern is that, a company like Trane is going to come in and make these improvements, and all of the staff's going to get laid off and there's no work for us to be done. I couldn't disagree more with that comment. It is actually going to create really new and exciting opportunities. And we're going to give the tools in the toolbox for those technicians and those staff members to be able to go out and actually have a really rigorous and robust experience of working with systems, because they're going to have really good information to make those kinds of good decisions. So again, that's where that virtual living learning lab comes in. So next slide, please. One of the things that Greg touched on real briefly was, what are the pathways that this creates? And Lee has said many times, this project is bigger than Pima. Because we're really excited to create that excitement for kids in high school, freshmen. We actually have curriculum in 4th grade on up to help kids understand energy and the opportunities to get into this type of work. But creating that virtual living learning lab that gets NC3 certifications and workforce through the public-private partnerships that we're able to do, and then multiply it through the 90-30 program that you have with NEU. And NEU is really an excited opportunity for us to use these similar things to get the students to come up and help them with their workforce. They can't hire enough people. So if we can get technicians and organizational support for them, it makes them viable, just like it makes Pima, and gives great opportunities for these kids as they go forward for either jobs and or 4-year degrees or beyond. This just a real quick slide. The white circles around the bullets on the left actually came from a partnership with the Arizona Institute of Digital Progress. And Lee's involved with the AZ 60, I can remember how to say it. But really this again is just another way to show that the JTED to Pima to NC3 to NEU and all the way up into the Palo Verde generating station. NEU is trying to get their employees some neat opportunities, and this helps build that foundation. So it's that public-private partnership on, again, that we call a P5 with pathways and a platform. So I won't get into, again, I feel myself talking too much like I tend to do, so I'll try to shorten this up. But the student engagement model, as you can see, starts in 4th, 5th grade, all the way up through high school. And, you know, we've had a gentleman, Daryl Royce, who's been teaching for 20 years in the JTED organization, teaching HVAC classes. And I mean, he's been, you know, getting any material and trying to find ways to fund what he's been doing. We're so excited that this platform and what you're doing will help give those kids a vision of what they can come to at Pima and see with the technology that will continuously be updated. Because as we have these systems working on your campus, we have to keep it fresh and that's the best way to keep students going as well. I know a lot of times as an organization in education, you buy a system or you get a piece of equipment and then it sits there and is used for 5 years and all of a sudden it's outdated. We have a built-in upgrade to this through our program to continuously update systems as we go. I think we can just pretty much skip through this. It's just showing the annual utility costs are reduced, and it creates an opportunity for those dollars to be repurposed, and then also build in the labs and the education components. One quick shot. I think this is a good slide just because it kind of gives others that maybe don't see this every day, but you've done an amazing job of a lot of solar systems, and that's a great foundation. But there's some ways to help enhance that. And I think as a distributed energy resource, by tying in, we get a little bit better data from your buildings and how we can make them more efficient. That'll create extra energy use that we can use for EV charging stations or thermal storage or for batteries to even reduce it more. And so we're excited to see how this all comes together over time. But as you can see, these systems will all be duplicated. That integration will mirror that system, actually create a duplicate of the front end that Bill and his team will use and allow students to learn from that. So they have this real data of every building across your 76 buildings across your campuses can become labs. And that's a transformational thing that Jim Russell was talking about, I think, is that when you can make it real for students, they get so much more out of it. And next slide, please. And pretty much to the end here, except one more slide on rebates after this, I believe. But you know, the ongoing data is as important as the upfront data. So getting the recommissioning and the retrocommissioning and understanding, making sure things work the way they're supposed to, and then measuring it, and then updating it and making it even better. And so the challenge for the students is going to help to create ideas that will be vetted and made sure that it makes sense, but then it can be actually tried on campus facilities and see if it actually works or not. Bill may be shaking a little bit because that gets a little scary when you get students coming up with ideas, but if it's done in the right way, it actually can become a great learning experiment for students and to show them the reality that there's cause and effect to a lot of the things that we're doing here. It meets the train technologies, our goals and commitments. We have a gigaton challenge, basically to reduce our customer carbon footprint by 1 gigaton of CO2. And so it just really truly hits us at the heart of what we are as a company, but what is also needed by train. And so there is a little bit of a selfish goal here. And that is that we need to hire technicians. It's the biggest limiting factor we have in our company right now. And there isn't a training center that has this kind of robust learning within the train portfolio. And in the climate zone that you're in, especially, I mean, we can teach kids cooling, right? I mean, that's refrigeration and big chillers all the way down to smaller units. This is a great place for this to happen. So again, one of the reasons we're so excited. And finally, I put this slide in just to show you that we haven't incorporated these dollars into the program. This is extra savings that would come from the TEP rebate application program. We, as you may, we have over 200 offices and 2,800 technicians and all sorts of people within the company. But to be able to individually go to each utility and understand it and use it like Bill has done in the past for his solar, we want to expand on this with the energy efficiency side. And that $600,000 to $800,000 can go into labs. It can go into more deferred maintenance changes, but there's going to be money coming back that can be allocated to better ways than continue to just have energy spend go on. And I believe that's it. So I'm going to turn it over to Dave B. I believe is going to take over and discuss some of the financials. Thank you so much, everybody, for this opportunity.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Klinko, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues, guests. It's my pleasure to do a quick summary of the impacts that Trane's work so far has led to in terms of what they're proposing. So I want to start, do a quick overview of where we're currently at. This is the current state of our utilities, and just focus on the bottom line here. So this is looking at the average costs for 2018 and 2019. So we know that 2020 was an odd year because of the pandemic. So we're focusing on comparing ourselves to pre-pandemic, more normal operations utility levels. So, excuse me, the average utility cost across the college was about $4 million. And when you take the interior space, or sort of the energy-based space, it's about 1.2 million square feet. So our cost per square footage from what's known as the energy cost index, which is what that figure is on the far right, it's about $3.36 of utility cost per square foot. And you can go to the next slide. I'll come back and give some reference as we go. So Trane's audit identified a series of projects. There are, hundreds of projects individually identified throughout from their walking around the district, identifying different lighting projects, different HVAC control projects that they could do. And they put them into these different categories. And so it's HVAC controls, lighting upgrades, domestic water upgrades, HVAC system upgrades, and transformer upgrades. You can see then the proposed project costs, total, including the lab and commissioning costs, total $13 million, $13.3 million. And the projected annual savings as a result of that. So as a number of, and Jim just mentioned, was talking about sort of a holistic change out, that incrementalism or incrementally changing things is very difficult to take total advantage of and get, for example, the TEP savings, things like that. In addition, it's very difficult to realize true savings on a utility standpoint. So what they're looking to do is a series of many projects throughout the district, totaling, and they're guaranteeing that the savings to our annual costs will be over $860,000. From a simple payback, that's about 15 years. Some would call that a return on investment, just so you know what the simple payback is. So that's essentially saving that amount of money each year. How many years would it take to pay for the full project costs? But when you think that a lot of these systems, a lot of the equipment needs to be replaced in the near future anyway, that's just doing it all at once is really also a critical part of what we're looking to do with this project. Okay, next slide. So looking at the actual reduced consumption that they're talking about with these different projects, changing out the system controls and creating a singular cohesive system, looks that they're estimating they're going to save 4.6+ million kilowatt hours per year, plus another 137,000 therms per year. A therm, for those who aren't familiar with that term, that's 100,000 BTUs. Kilowatt hour is 1,000 kilowatts. Back. Thanks. And then 1,000 gallons of water is also with the domestic water upgrades, changing out the toilets, the flushing mechanisms, the sinks, things like that. is estimated to save another 5,261 kilogallons. Again, that makes the number look smaller when you think in terms of that's thousands. So overall, and now you can switch to the next slide. Now to put that in context for where we are, so the left hand, the current slide is how much our annual consumption is in terms of electrical, the therms and the kilogallons. And then the sheer size of reduction that we're talking about with the train projects. So with electrical reducing by 7 million kilowatt hours is about a 28% reduction of our consumption. The BTUs consumed is about a similar range, 29% reduction. And then the water is about an 8% reduction of our annual consumption of that. So we have very real savings in terms of the actual utility usage at the college. So overall, the annual cost, again, I mentioned was about $863,000. It's a decrease of 22%. So we're talking about a sizable recommendation, sizable change as recommended from these projects. And then when you look back at that energy cost index, it drops that $3.36 number by almost 75 cents. So a reduction of 22%. Again, these are sizable changes that we're talking about. Next slide. Now to put it in the context, and Ms. Ripley, I think this might get at a little bit what you were talking about, this holistic perspective of the college's impact on the environment in getting into sustainability goals, because that is one part of this project, was to really kickstart a major sustainability initiative for the college. When you talk about the energy savings that we're talking about, the $7 million kilowatt hours, the 140,000 therms per year, that's the equivalent of 5,800 metric tons of carbon dioxide. And these conversions are from government-based converters. So you put in how many kilowatt hours you're expecting to save, and then it calculates out the savings, the relative savings in CO2. Put in a different way, that'd be the equivalent of taking 1,260 cars off the street for an entire year, or the amount of energy used in about 680 houses over the span of a year. So what we have is we have recommended projects that have the ability to not only reduce the college's annual utility costs, but make a notable impact on the consumption of energy for the community and really be leaders in terms of that. So you can go to the next slide. And then, so the big question would be, okay, so how are we going to fund this project? So there's a couple of things. The board approved a new policy that sets this target threshold for our reserves at 75%. If you look at the bar chart on the right-hand side, you can see a little red dot. That little red dot represents what our target threshold is. So what we're looking to do is make sure that we have reserves that are at least as high as that red dot. These are projected for the end of the year, so these are estimates. It may be a little bit different from this. There's big changes happening because of the federal funds coming in, but this is a reasonable estimate for where we'll finish the year. On the left-hand side, and sorry, the chart sort of should have been shrunk a little bit, but sorry about that. So we're estimating that the reserves available will be about 192 million. That target that I mentioned, that red dot, is about 126 million. So that's a net difference of about 66 million. So we have at hand, sort of above that target threshold to keep on hand, about $66 million of available money for reinvestment. We've already talked about the Allied Health Building, and the board has given approval to go forward with starting to reserve money for that project. That's about $23.5 million. So available, that would leave us with about $42 million plus. So we definitely have funds available for this project. There's another component that is worth mentioning, which is of that $13 million, about little over $4 million of that we're estimating is eligible to be funded directly from HERF funds, from the federal funds. So that gives us a little bit more flexibility even on top of that. But basically what I'm saying here is that we have good reserves on hand to really take the opportunity now to reinvest in a holistic change at the college that really kickstarts this initiative. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so the advantages of this program, as you've heard through all of these different presentations, both series, both the first two and then the latter two, is that this would give us a state-of-the-art training facility for HVAC and data analytics programs. Think about that students would have available through this program the ability to crowdsource, like to work on projects together, and you could have a faculty member saying to their students, here's a bunch of data. We want you to identify which air handler might be underperforming or might be costing more money than the others. That would be a good one for replacement. Jim alluded to that might make Bill a little bit nervous, but the ability for students to really get their hands in on real data and real live equipment will be, I think, immeasurable in terms of what their future career prospects will be. As I mentioned, that this gives us the ability to do a holistic change. Having consistent, refreshed, and integrated systems and controls will be extremely valuable to more efficiently run the operation here at the college. As I mentioned, the most obvious one is we're going to have reduced annual utility costs. With the way that this program is put together, is that's a guarantee from Train. So if we go forward with this program, they're guaranteeing that we'll see the reductions that we're talking about here. And it puts that burden and the risk on them to go forward and make sure that we realize those savings. And I alluded to this also, is that a lot of this equipment is antiquated and will need to be replaced in the next number of years. That's going to reduce the annual maintenance costs and some of the deferred maintenance costs that we're going to have to budget on an annual basis. So we holistically change the stuff out. Think about like the idea of a car. When you have a brand new car, you don't have major maintenance for the first number of years. And then as that car starts getting to be older, then you start having to plan for more and more of that. So think of it in sort of the same way, massively decreasing our carbon footprint as a college, putting forward and identifying clear sustainability program metrics. And then obviously we have the publicity element to it, where we can start promoting what we're doing as a college when we have these clear goals in mind. And then as we start attaining them, we can start tracking them and promoting that as the college. And then lastly, and this was alluded to in terms of the solar, is as we go forward with the program, it's actually pretty likely, and Train is expecting that as we go forward and start getting more data, that it will identify future savings opportunities. There's probably potential to integrate solar and use our solar power in a different way than we currently are, and there might be some advantages going forward with integrating those kinds of programs. And so as we start this program going and get the data, it's going to start identifying some new opportunities that we can take advantage of. Okay, last slide. This is just a recap, and this was also in one of Jim's slides, but this was what we were looking to do when we went out and did a competitive RFP. We were looking for firms that would be able to do this comprehensive energy management program for the college. That is, to do a comprehensive assessment of where we were at with our current equipment, make recommendations for what we could do to get our systems into a current state-of-the-art status, to establish and track energy cost reduction goals, identify and provide funding sources. And I've just talked about it, that circumstances have led us to the point where at one point we put into the RFP the idea of potentially finance funding, doing some different ways to fund this over time. But circumstances with our reserve, with some of the federal funds that we have coming in, it gives us the opportunity to just essentially front load the costs of that. And then implementing the smart technology and the data analytic platforms to monitor the efficiency and then optimize our own system performance. That's internal, making sure that we're doing as much as we can to keep energy consumption as low as possible and keep costs down. And then lastly, you get into what is really, I think, the shining element of this, the diamond of this whole program, is developing what is going to be nationally recognized as a state-of-the-art way to do HVAC and BCT type training. We will be premier in this area with this program. So that is my summary of the impacts, and I'll leave it, open it up if there are questions.
Are there questions from the board? I can't see everybody because of the presentation, so if you could just use the symbol, the raise the hand symbol at the bottom. Oh, Ms. Garcia, go ahead.
Dr. B, are your numbers, do you stand by your numbers? Are those accurate?
Yeah. So the numbers, other than getting to where that bar chart is, the figures before that are all from the train executive summary. So those are the numbers that they've put together. They include, you know, the cost savings and the energy savings that they're expecting to realize.
Okay, but we're going to vet
and then
those
the bar
numbers,
chart
right?
are our estimates from our staff from the college. Excuse me?
They are from our college? We have...
When you get to the bar chart one with the reserves and available reserves is a calculation from my staff.
You know, and then the other question, I don't know whether you could answer that, but when we did the assessment of the equipment, the train did, you know, like the Northwest campus was fairly new. I don't recall how new it is. And I know that some of the systems are aging. So the plan is to replace everything with this one company, okay? So that it can be on one system. But the Energy Living Lab, you know, we originally had it planned to just be within the downtown campus. And that in itself was going to train the people with some other buildings. But it didn't have to be entirely everything. Is that correct?
So Ms. Garcia, that is not correct. The whole purpose of the Living Lab is the entire college becomes the Living Lab. The center of the program is located at the downtown campus, yes, but the entire college is the Living Lab.
Okay.
Chancellor Lambert, could you talk to us a little bit? You know, have we in the past, have we created a comprehensive climate action plan for the college, and have we identified carbon goals and reduction goals? And can you tell us, because I see Bill nodding his head, can you tell us how those align with this proposal?
So we are working to build a integrated climate action plan that really touch on what Ms. Ripley was talking about earlier. So we don't have all of that in place yet. And so this becomes a foundational piece that's going to lead to the integration of all those other pieces. So we have Dr. Nick Richmond, who's going to be leading that effort for the college, working with Dr. David Doré and Bill and others as part of that, and then aligning with what the city's trying to do. So we're headed in that direction, absolutely.
Okay. Ms. Ripley, and then we'll go to Mr. Ward, who also has his hand up. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentations. Just wanted to reiterate I think it's great that we need to go full force strongly on our climate change policies and program. And to that end, in addition to teaching students how to repair, how to take apart and put together HVAC systems, et cetera, I'm assuming that there is a mandatory piece to teach them the theory, and perhaps even not the politics, but the theory and the concept, and at a local and at a global level, and why energy and energy efficiency, not just climate change, but the whole concept behind energy efficiency, since we're dedicating and devoting so much effort and money into this Living Lab, which is a great idea. The beauty of a community college is not just the VOTEC side, but really preparing students for life in the real world and the opportunity to advance. Thanks.
So Patrick, could you talk a little bit about that piece? Because I know you've integrated that into your curriculum.
Yeah, we have a sustainability class that we teach now, and also, you know, as part of the NCCR curriculum, you know, sustainability comes up in several of the levels that are taught. You know, in addition to that, you know, and what we're talking about here really is, you know, walking a fine line between, you know, comfort and sustainability and energy savings. And, you know, like, you know, years ago, they used to put cages around the thermostat so that people wouldn't turn the thermostats up in their office because that was the only control that you had over it, right? So now things are much more sophisticated and they are much more advanced, and they are designed to optimize and to monitor consistently and constantly in order to make those changes. And those concepts are all, you know, a part of what we teach. You know, we talk about you know, venting and things like that, dangers of having different appliances vent into your house, carbon monoxide poisoning, things like that. You know, all of those things go together. And also, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about, you know, the way that they used to build years and years ago and the way we build now and why we build now. When you go out to our Habitat for Humanity house that we're building on 24th and Park, you can see students are there building, and they're learning these different concepts about, you know, the envelope and sealing the envelope and knowing exactly how much air is coming into your house and how much is leaving. Things like, you know, windows and doors and R values. So they're learning all of that and how it affects, you know, the environment and how, you know, just simply, you know, making a house more energy efficient is going to reduce that carbon footprint.
Mr. Ward or Ms. Ripley, do you have a follow-up question?
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure that was being taught as.
Okay, Mr. Ward, and then
Yeah.
Ms. Garcia, you still have your hand raised, so I think you have a follow-up question. Okay, Mr. Ward, go ahead.
Can I go?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to say that, you know, we are, as an institution of our size, we're actually bound in a sense by the state and the federal government to conserve energy. So that's something that we have to do, that we have to look at all the time. So the issue is a lot of entities like us that are big have a lot of deferred maintenance backlog. And so one of the things I would say to Board Member Ripley to answer your question is yes, we do. We've actually have put together a plan years ago. That's why we have a 7.5 megawatt solar system, which is about 20% of the college's energy now. Plus, we were one of the first institutions educational institutions to go with electric vehicles, which are our Priuses, which you probably see them out and about. We're actually looking right now, the police department has 4 electric motorcycles, and we're looking at some electric police cars too. We are also looking at, like Mr. Knudsen had brought up earlier, adding charging stations to our solar. That is something that had been proposed a number of years ago by our solar provider. And then 2, with our water also, one of the things we've done is we made a commitment years ago to start doing away with your regular toilets and go to waterless urinals and other types of toilets that had different types of low flow and things and stuff like that. So the institution has it. It's just at the end of the day, we're sitting on 2 million square feet of facilities, and West Campus is 50 years old. And so we do have a lot of older equipment. That's why I think when I talked to the board the last time when you guys approved we were talking about whether we were going to build a new health facility or remodel. And the board made the recommendation to support the remodel. With that said, we're able to do a lot of that deferred maintenance that we try to do. It just all depends on how these projects are financed. One of the things I would say to the group too is I know we talk, and I know the discussion is always talking about new. I've been in this industry since 1979. and I have a lot of knowledge in this industry. One of the things I would say is let's not lose sight of the fact that students need to learn how to work on the old stuff too. And so that's something that I've worked with Greg and his team to try to get more students. We've had a couple here and there, but remember, you're not always going to go work on brand new. The old stuff is what the bulk of things are. And then to answer your question, Board Member Gonzalez, is we did receive their recommendations and the proposal from Train, and our facilities team is vetting it and looking at it. Because one of the things I would say to the group here is that we still have to vet things related to energy in a sense, because we do have to report these things to the state. Also, too, we have two energy providers. We have TEP and we have Tesla in a sense, and then Solon is their contractor, and then also they have Solon has the Northwest campus is their system. So all these things have to be vetted. We will be vetting that as we move forward with it, but just to let you guys know that this is something that we're doing. It's just at the end of the day, you have to finance it. And so, Pima's probably sitting on about $30–40 million worth of deferred maintenance. In my opinion, that sounds high, but that's not bad. Most institutions have way more than that, and a lot of them don't even get any dollars. You guys have been very good at supporting us throughout the years with our multi-campus projects, and we've been able to hit a lot of things at the college. But like I said, we're sitting on close to 2 million square feet of facilities.
Ms. Garcia, you have a follow-up question? Your microphone is off.
Okay. So, Mr. Ward, so you said we have how much in deferred maintenance?
Carry a backlog anywhere, we had it when I first started here, we were probably in the 100 million range, and that was 21 years ago. And so we're probably around, I would say, just off the top of my head, about 30 to 40 million. Actually, there is a proposal that is going to the board as part of our this year's capital related to doing another facilities condition audit. And remember, deferred maintenance isn't just related to air conditioning equipment. It's roads, roofs, structures, sewer, water, all types of things that the college, the total infrastructure that we're sitting on. So it's not just this stuff, it's a lot more broader. And so that is something that is going to be going forward to the board, because we always want to keep that updated so we know kind of what we're sitting on. If you allow your deferred maintenance to go too high, then what that does is that puts you in a position to where really nothing that you do is going to take care of things, because you're just too far gone. And so, like I said, you guys have been very great, very good to us throughout the years. I could probably tell you that since we started our capital assessment in 2007, we probably spent over $100 million just in general doing capital construction projects and things and stuff throughout the district. And so, it is what it is. I totally agree with what Board Member Ripley said. You have to have an integrated plan related to all of this stuff, because at the end of the day, we are governed to save energy. That's part of, I may even have I know I have the last directive from the last governor, not the governor that's in place now, that basically said we had to commit to lowering our energy, our numbers. And remember too, people always think that if you just put new stuff in and you get new systems, we're done. It's not just that, it's how we run and operate our facilities. Are we going to run 7 days a week, 24 hours a day? Are we going to shut things off? And I think by some of the things that we've talked about, that puts us in a good position, because it gives us better control over our systems and things and stuff like that. But just understand, this is not just something that it's one and done and we're done. You're never done. Like the chancellor said earlier, when you're sitting on a lot of square footage like this is an everyday thing. That's why, my team are out there on it, getting it 7 days a week to keep things moving and running and stuff.
Okay, one last question.
Yes, Garcia.
I'm sorry. The one last question is, so you are going to present your assessment or your group's assessment in a comparison to what is being presented from Train?
Well, what we would do is go through the proposal, and if there's any questions or concerns or whatever, then our goal would be to work with Train and Dave and others to ensure that that it gets fixed or that it's correct. Because like I said, we are using, because we have received, or we have given out third-party information related to our systems and things and stuff like that. In other words, TEP, we provided a bunch of stuff from TEP. They provided it to us, they provided it to the team. We've also provided, the college did a bunch of energy audits years ago. I think they ended in 2013, and we brought a high-level company who's in town, who's built 2 of the largest central plants in the United States. And they did our energy assessment and made recommended recommendations. And so we've also got them taking a look at it, and also our solar provider. Because one of the things that everybody has to understand is that when you go with the power companies, you, and Jeff will know this, you negotiate your rates. And the same with solar, you negotiate your rates. So you have to make sure that you're not going to do anything that, in a sense, that could affect a rate that you have already negotiated with your utilities. And so that's the main emphasis of what we're looking at, is because we want to make sure that we're not going to do something that in turn affects a rate, or actually in a sense makes it to where we're really not saving any money on another side. And so we're bound to do this. And as you guys know, all of our projects and everything that we do within this college, the minute we touch this building, it has to go forward to the state fire marshal's office for approval, which in a sense would be submitted through me as the chief facilities officer for the district. So that's standard. That's no different to me than any of my other counterparts in the state. They'd have to do the same thing.
Great. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Garcia. Thank you, Mr. Ward. Mr. Gonzalez, looks like you have a question. Your microphone is off, sir. Okay.
Okay. I just want to mention, make a comment as well too. I think it was an outstanding presentation. One of the things that was mentioned by Mr. Wilson, I believe, that we were probably going to get more students from out of state in reference to the what we're going to be providing to our community. I do go back into really let's focus on our population within our districts here. I think that there's a lot of need locally. I think that should be one of the emphasis that we saw by a report that Mr. Lambert gave out to us as well too. I know that Mr. B went over the finances, and one of the things that he mentioned that we're doing a guaranteed savings, and I hope that we are going to be doing those guaranteed savings as well too. He did mention right after that, he mentioned that that he and his team put it into the that was part of the RFP in the development of that. So which is good, It comes back around in reference to I have a statement that I want to do and will do. And my statement is, I must inform my fellow board members that myself and Ms. Garcia and I have firsthand information and indicates that Mr. Knudsen has stated that he participated in the development of the energy management program, not as he was with, and I have reviewed Ms. Siegel's second report, in which she concludes that if Mr. Knudsen participated in writing the energy management program RFP, it would be a violation of the procurement policy. Because of Ms. Siegel's report, I believe that I have an obligation to report this evidence to the full board. And I would like to share this in an executive session soon, very soon. That's my statement.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gonzalez. Are there any other questions from any of the other board? I know we have one more item this evening.
Well, I need to,
Yes, Ms. Garcia.
okay, so I also have a statement. I'm sorry. Okay, in the past, my statement is in the past, members have failed to inform the board of important information regarding possible violations of statute or policy. And so I guess I want to confirm that Mr. Gonzalez and I want to, I have gotten from the same source, the same information, and just wanted to share it with our staff. Furthermore, I would like to ask that prior to board approval, the train proposal be fully evaluated by facilities, staff, and that the evaluation be presented to the board in its entirety. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Garcia. Again, I would, if board members have concerns about any legality, please contact Mr. Sylvan directly and the Chancellor directly to inform them of your concerns. And that is the state policy. And that is really the first and best way you've brought it to our attention now. And I'm sure Mr. Sylvan will be reaching out to ask for additional information. Mr. Knudsen, I have a question actually. Could you talk a little bit about, I can't imagine that we're the first government or educational entity to partner with your company to undergo a process like this, and then the resulting outcome looks at different mechanisms to finance through savings and these sort of guarantees. Could you just tell us a little bit about some of the other partnerships that you have been involved with, particularly in the education space, and maybe highlight one or two in the government space? And then we have to move on because we do have this other item to discuss.
Sure. Well, I'd like to mention that, yes, we, as an organization, we've literally done billions of dollars over the last 40 years of these types of programs. The federal government is a huge proponent of energy performance contracting. And Ms. Ripley, you probably are aware of some of the opportunities that the train has been involved in with the Navy and Army and the military forces. We have some large bases across Japan and other locations in China and Korea that are currently underway in the $200 to $400 million that are all vetted, and all of our procedures and practices, by the way, just have the things that you guys mentioned were concerns and built. We're totally open to having things vetted because we follow industry practices that is common throughout the entire. There's over 50 energy service companies in the country. We're rated in the top 10 of those organizations by the NASCO organization, the National Association of Energy Services Companies. And so we're more than willing to provide any resources that we can to show you that what we're doing is industry standard practices. One example is a school district that I'd like to share to answer your question, Chairman Klinko. And that is Mesa County Valley School District, a rural school district in Colorado, in Grand Junction, has 52 schools. They had actually more square feet than Pima. About 10 years ago, we completed a $10.7 million project. And I did forward to Dr. Lambert and a couple of your staff, basically the case study that was a similar amount of, it was between $700,000 and $800,000 of savings per year. And now after 10 years, the energy manager who was there during that time and did a submittal of a report showed that we not only overachieved that, but they're with an integrated climate action plan that we're excited to work with you on, have achieved over $1.8 million in savings per year of actual dollars. And so that those numbers and all the information is pretty exciting. I think it's a relatively similar project. It was controls in all the buildings. It was lighting upgrades and mechanical and electrical system upgrades throughout their school district. So that's an example of one that has some age to it that is nice to see actual performance on. So happy to share more information on that. And have you talked to the principal of that project as well as the energy manager? Again, our federal team is more than willing. We did give some examples of some of those case studies. Happy to do that. We have a lot of other higher education organizations, and we have Mike Hines on the phone, and Mike's our national director for these CS programs. And I think he can answer, be happy to bring other national case studies that we're doing around the country. Is that helpful?
That helps answer my question. I really appreciate it. And again, I appreciate your involvement in the institution and this proposal. I mean, I think what I'm hearing you alluding to is that the $800,000 in cost savings is really the lower level benchmark guarantee, but we could anticipate perhaps more robust savings over time. So I appreciate that, and I also just want to thank everybody involved in this presentation. I know we had this scheduling issue from last week, and I just want to thank you for adjusting your schedules to come back and present to us today. We really appreciate it, the open dialogue and the overview. So thank you, everybody, and Chancellor Lambert and your team, and everyone working together to advance, I think, innovative solutions to help us save resources over a long run. So thank you.
Mr. Chair,
it looks like there are a few more questions here about this item. So let me cycle through. First, let me start with Board Member Ripley. Then I'll go to Chancellor Lambert, then Mr. Ward, and then Ms. Garcia. You still have your hand raised.
I don't want anything. I'm done.
Okay. Your hand is still raised, Pima. Perfect. So, Ms. Ripley.
Yeah, just real quickly for audience members who, for the benefit of those watching, I don't want the bigger picture to be lost either. I think having centers of excellence is a great idea, and the concept of using a living lab is really what we're talking about here. And I think bringing it all together in a holistic plan, all of the centers, but not just, again, like I said, teaching students how to put together and take apart HVAC systems, but really training and educating a whole generation of students on sustainability, on climate change, on the responsibilities of being a citizen, not just locally, but statewide, nationally, and globally, I think is really what I would like as a board member that we all focus on, because we're all going down our paths individually, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Ward and Mr. Duray. I mean, we're all doing what we need to do, but I think for the benefit of the audience, all of this, as a board member, I want to help bring this to a higher level of what we're really looking at for the future, and how we can really bring Pima, for lack of anyone else doing it, I think Pima Community College has an opportunity to kind of pave the way. If anything, the solar capital of the world should be, or the nation, should be Arizona. We are in the middle of a drought contingency plan is serious, and people aren't looking at it. And when people talk about an existential threat, it's used so often that it loses its meaning, but we really here in Tucson can really make a dent. So muddling through all of the details, I think, is important. Thank you very much, Mr. Knudsen, and everybody else for being transparent. I hope we get through this, and so we can actually start. Mr. B mentioned $42 million or something like that in reinvestment. And to Mr. Gonzalez's point, Board Member Gonzalez's point, reinvesting that locally into recruitment and enrollment. We had a study session on enrollment and recruitment. It's one of my biggest issues as a board member is local recruitment, and that can be reinvested. As a board, we can talk about budget and how to reallocate those funds to not just hire more and get more resources for our recruitment and our enrollment folks, but really follow through with not just getting new applicants, but seeing these students through their first semester, their first year. I think that's really an important piece, because otherwise the centers of excellence, won't be filled. So I really wanted to try to, if anyone's tuning in and don't know what we're talking about, this is the bigger picture. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ripley. Mr. Ward, and then Mr. Gonzalez, and then we're going to move on.
Chair Klinko, yeah, real quick. I just want to say, Jim, we'll keep, as we've been, keep working with you, keep talking with you. The teams, and we know our teams are meeting all the time, so we'll be in touch with the ASCP. And I just want to let everybody know too that we are in facilities and police and safety and everything. We love to have students as part of our team. Greg knows that. And so I know everybody, it was brought up a number of times that we're concerned. Not at all. That's the way I learned. That's how I transitioned from one trade to another. And then I actually ended up, transitioning to 4 different ones. But that's something that's near and dear to my heart. So Greg, you, Dave, Dolores, please understand, we would love to have as many student workers that want to come out and learn how to work on this beast that we've got here. I'll take all the help I can get. So I just want you guys to know that. Please understand that's how people learn, is they get not just in the classroom, and they get hands-on training. So I just want you guys to know that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ward. Mr. Gonzalez.
Well, actually, my hands, I pressed the lower, but I'll make a comment. What I wanted to say is, like I mentioned earlier, the students should always be first and providing those opportunities. I think the Center of Excellence, it's a step towards it. And I do commend and Ms. Ripley and reiterate in reference to my really focusing and recruiting, and not only recruiting, but also the retention of all students that live locally here within the Pima County. And I've always been an advocate, will continue to be an advocate, but more important, I think the students are the future of tomorrow. We're here for a little bit of time, but I think we can really do a lot for them. And we will, no matter what, we will in reference to education and the training and what we want to do. But they are our future. We cannot deny that. But I think we're in a good route, and we'll see. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Chancellor Lambert, when we work on the Integrated Climate Action Plan, I hope you come forward early on to the board to talk about some of those aspirational goals, because I know I would love to see this college move towards carbon neutral. So moving on, let's get to our Educational Facilities Master Plan mid-cycle revision. You know, I know we're going to run a little short on time, so if everybody is amenable, maybe we can plan to run an extra 10 minutes. If that's not time, but let's try to keep, you know, it as quick as possible.
So, Mr. Chair, I just want to hit 2 points and then I'll transition us. First of all, we're not Ms. Garcia, we're not replacing everything. We're tying in to existing systems as well. This project will probably address about 40 to 50% of our deferred maintenance needs. So just keeping all, and our focus is our community and our students in this community. I don't want folks to lose sight of that, because that is the focus. So with that said, we are so pleased to be able to share with you the update on the Educational Facilities Master Plan mid-cycle revision. And so I believe I'm turning this over to you, right, Dolores?
Yes, you are, Chancellor.
Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Klinko, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, guests, and colleagues. So it's my pleasure today to be accompanying my colleagues and our Smith Group consultants to present our revisit of the Education and Facilities Master Plan. I'd like to provide some context. So as we know, the evolving information of the global pandemic, along with the growing social unrest and a significant demographic shift in the traditional student population, has impacted higher education forever. So as we were going through this revisit of the Education Facilities Master Plan from 2015, all of a sudden we're in the middle of a pandemic and social unrest. So we needed to even pivot again in this revisit in focusing on the post-COVID new normal. And so that's what you're going to be seeing today. In addition, what you'll be seeing are also recommendations. I'd like to make it clear that, again, this is a revisit, a refresh of the 2015 plan, and also that these are recommendations. So that means the college is going to be deciding whether to use these recommendations or not. It's not set in stone. Our consultants did an excellent job doing a thorough job in looking at analysis data, talking to stakeholders within the college and outside of the college as well. So these are their results that they'll be sharing with you. So in 2015, we had the focus on the one aligned future, and that was looking at aligning like programs and services across the college, also looking at the space that needs to be used more efficiently and reducing facility operating costs, and also the establishment of the COEs. So the Centers of Excellence. So we have done a lot since 2015, and they're going to share some of the accomplishments as well. So now the update for 2020 is the future of work and learning. So you'll see the academic vision as well as the facilities vision, and my colleagues will be sharing that as well. but also remember that we're looking at things through an equity lens. So with that, I'd like to pass it on to my colleague, Dr. Doré, and then to Vice Chancellor Bill Ward and our consultants. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dancerda. So, and I just want to make some brief comments as well. I think what you're seeing, and I think particularly, I think Board Member Ripley, to some of your comments, we are very focused on the future of work and learning. And I think that's what you're going to see in this presentation. You know, the workforce has changed due to not only the pandemic, but Industry 4.0. And then the pandemic has only accelerated the need for us to continue to move even quicker. And really, you know, we know that we have plenty of space, but some of our spaces really need to be adapted to the future of work and the future of learning. And so I think you're going to see a lot of that as well. And the centers are a key component to this educational and facilities master plan. And I want to just remind the board that these centers are being shaped by our local community and our local business and industry, and really are designed to serve the upskilling of this community and are designed to lift this community up in terms of wages. So, and you're going to see a lot more focus on IBEST programs that really integrate bringing our adult basic education students onto our campuses and to complete more short-term credentials for our working learners here in Pima County. And so forth. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Bill.
Yeah, since in the essence of time, our team here had prepared for a 2-hour presentation. And so basically what I'm going to do is just kick it over to Doug and Lauren and Frank. And if you guys would, and then also too, one thing I will say is Michael Smith down here in the corner, you know, as Dolores alluded to, we started this in 2015. And I was able to work with this team, you know, since that time frame. But I want to let everybody know that Michael's is my lead analyst for facilities. I've been the project manager for this project, and Michael is the assistant. But I have to tell you, he's just done so much work. It's just amazing. And I'm just very proud of Michael, of just all the time that he has taken, including Saturdays and Sundays and whenever I call him. So thank you, guys.
Bill, thank you so very much. Board members, a great pleasure to be with you on this lovely Monday afternoon. We'll attempt to abridge our comments based on your schedule this afternoon. My colleague Lauren, in just a moment, will share some slides, and then we'll commence with our narrative today. You've seen this in advance, so we can perhaps migrate through some of this introductory material quite quickly. But there's 4 components to this afternoon's presentation. They're listed on the screen. We'll first talk a little bit about where we are in terms of the context of Pima. We'll spend a bit time talking about analysis, and then we'll conclude this afternoon talking about where you're going with recommendations and opportunities for you to make change. So the first chapter is contextual. I'd like to begin by focusing on a couple of things that are important to the college, and that is the underpinning of this plan. It's been mentioned just moments ago, the importance of the Achieve 60 and your strategic directives. All the content on the right, you should be applauded for. This is best in practice in higher education, which is a layering of strategic documents to the board to inform fiscal decisions that impact local students. This is what we're going to be talking about this afternoon. We, of course, as the provost mentioned, are very focused, and you'll see some recommendations specifically targeted at the 6 goals of your diversity, equity, and inclusive plan. These are important to us. Also mentioned today, but worth reiterating, we began this journey about 7 years ago, developing the One Aligned Future. Just for reference, the 4 components along the bottom are important, right? This is about strategic alignment. It's about space. It's about reduction of operating costs, which of course was the conversation we just had moments ago, and the development of centers of excellence. And I'm pleased to report, if you look backwards, several of you mentioned this, but we actually created 2 slides to celebrate you, the board members, some of the accomplishments you've been able to achieve through the lens of the educational master plan. And I'd like to pull out just a few because it's worth mentioning. You've done great work, and we fully expect that the decisions you'll make in the future will be equally as great. Highlights include centers of excellence in applied technology, centers of excellence in public safety and security, development of center of excellence in arts. You've also developed fully online programs in the last few years and have implemented the Ad Astra classroom utilization tool. These are tremendous accomplishments. You should be applauded for that. In parallel with that, there have been some amazing accomplishments on the facility side. You're witness to those right now. Those are coming out of the ground in new construction and or renovated facilities. The hospitality and tourism piece, of course, your two footprints on the downtown campus, automotive technology and advanced manufacturing, are fantastic accomplishments, along with your aviation center. This is just a highlight of where you've been. And again, we're excited to talk about the future through today's lens. So a couple of footnotes before we get into all the details. This plan is focused on a few things. The provost and Dr. Dore mentioned that this is focusing on Industry 4.0 and the superpowers. It's about skills. It's about upskilling. It's about creating better ways for students to succeed. And it's about modifying the facilities and operations to achieve those goals. And a couple of last points that I think are worth reiterating. The focus of your update is narrowed a bit from the 2015 plan. So this particular effort focuses educationally on the content on the left. Centers of Excellence Review, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Model. We'll talk about that downtown, Pima Online, and finally the centers. So those will be the purview of today's narrative. On the facility side, you can see we focused on anything that changed in the site, your land holdings, your assets. We conducted new space utilization and adequacy evaluation. And finally, we looked at site strategies to accommodate these things. So again, to repeat, today, the focus of this update is on those elements on the left. So for those of you that were a part of the plan several years ago, the schedule looks familiar. It's an approximate 11-month process. You can see across the top and through the middle, we ran both of them concurrently, both the educational and facilities piece. We met with you, as you remember, at the end of last year in 2020. So here we are at the end of our journey for your critique and counsel. And we also wanted to celebrate. So for those of you that get asked, so who participated in all this, you should be pleased, proud, Pima supporters saying we met with lots of folks. This was an inclusive process. It was transparent, and we believe it will be transformative. Finally, there are 9 things to remember today. So if you take away a handful of things, these are the 9 things that our plan, your plan, is focused on. Better space use based on changing needs pedagogically and for our students. Industry partnerships and engaging them better and differently, growing online programs, and transforming who you teach and how you teach them. Those are highlights of the 9. So we're going to get into a rhythm this afternoon, and it goes like this. We'll share some content like I just did, and we'll pause for questions that will be repeated through each of the different 4 chapters for today. So before we go any further, wanted to just make sure that if there are questions, we address them right now.
And so I would just sort of say, for ease of this, if the board members could use their hand function, and if you could just call on the board members as that's going, I think that might be a little bit easier and would just allow a little more direct communication for this section. Okay.
Chair Klinko, that sounds great. And formally and for the record, because I know there are people out in the community watching this, my name is Doug Kozma. I'm a vice president with Smith Group, and it's a great pleasure to be with you and the board members today. Okay, Lauren, why don't we migrate to the second chapter, which is focused on the analytics that got us to some of our early recommendations for the board today.
Great, thank you very much, Doug. Good afternoon, everyone. Board. members of Pima Community College and community members. I'm Frank Markley, and I am a principal with Smith Group, and I am within Campus Strategy and Analytics. So today we're going to talk a little bit about both internal and external analyses and look at the impact of the Educational Master Plan that was created in 2015 on the strategy with respects to enrollment and student demographics. There's quite a bit of information here, and I know time is short, and so this is really a sampling of some of the things that we look at, but it'll kind of give you an idea of sort of the comprehensiveness of our review. I think first and foremost is, looking at, first of all, student trends and enrollment, also looking at student demographics, looking at how the headcount in terms of age cohorts has shifted from 2015 to 2020, a little bit younger demographic in certain components, and then looking at the student demographic with regards to race and ethnicity. Here you're in the middle of the screen, you can see in essence that Hispanic, Latino, and Black African Americans have increased. Congratulate Pima Community College for the work that they do and part of their diversity plan. On the right-hand side is what we did is we took the the annualized FTE by division and broke that down into career-oriented types of programs, which you see the four at the top. In the middle is more of the liberal arts, humanities, social sciences, and sciences. And then about 2/3 of the way down, you'll see college readiness, and then Pima Online. And what you're going to see here is that, percent of, enrollment growth decline for that 5-year period. So we're doing this simply to understand the impact of, first of all, pathways, and second of all, looking at overall centers of excellence and their impact overall enrollment. I think you'll see here that overall there's been some declines, but at the same time, when you look at the arts, humanities, social sciences, and the sciences, you have to realize that overall, since 1970, the number of BAs and liberal arts programs have declined from roughly about 36% to 23%. So this is also having an impact on some of the things that we see, from college choice all the way to the types of majors that students are selecting. So when we look at this, we have to keep in mind that the overall, since 2015, that we projected some enrollment increases along the way, and those simply have not materialized at Pima Community College. So what you're seeing here is total undergraduate fall enrollment in degree granting programs. So, and again, nationally, when you look at this, we're looking at going from roughly 7.88 million in 2010 to roughly 5.9 million in 2019. So there's been roughly a 24% decline overall in U.S. production of two-year students. And then obviously what we talked about was the pandemic, and looking at changes in high school graduate enrollments, and what happened between fall of 19 and fall of 20 all had impact on enrollments moving forward. So part of the assignment that we had was to look at how the demographics that we looked, we had in 2015 really compared to, where we are today. And, the strategies that we developed in 2015 as part of the Educational Master Plan really had to start with trying to understand, are those strategies or are those trends, going to continue, especially as we move into the next part of the planning process. So what you see on the left-hand side is that total and public high school graduates, you're going to see state of Arizona starting in 2026, a gradual decline. You can see in Pima County population by age from 15 to 20 that we've already started to experience some of that from the U.S. Census. So from that perspective, you're looking at shifts in demographic in terms of not only high school graduates, but also age demographics. One of the things that we do is also look at different surveys that, especially national surveys. And this was at sort of at the height of the pandemic in 2020. And this was a study by Strata and Center for Consumer Insights. And what you see here is, I think, very illuminating. And they were talking about student preferred options for college. And this was, again, August of 2020. And so on the left-hand side, you'll see that, since the onset of the pandemic, Americans, they expressed a preference for non-degree and skill training options. So you can see 25% for non-degree credentials, 37% for skill training, only 12% for associate degree. And then on the right-hand side, you can look at in terms of what they're looking for in terms of factors in choosing an educational program: streamline, relevant, stackability, and value. Now, we've looked at, continue to look at different surveys, and this is one that just came out last month, and it's called Family Voices, Building Pathways from Learning to Meaningful Work. It was sponsored by the Carnegie and the Gallup Foundation, so very reputable in terms of the firm that actually did the work. This was a national sample size of almost 3,000 results. But when you look at these statements about, what is really important, and you'll see at the top there in the middle, 40% of parents prefer their child to attend college, express interest in career or skill building learning experiences. And then down in the black box, parents are twice as likely to say that they want their child to complete a skills-based training program than prefer a two-year degree. And then the bar chart, you can see very clearly when you start to look at, different ways the, interested in pathways for their children. It's very interesting to look at, especially apprenticeships. When you look at the strongly agree and the agree categories, roughly 57% parents said that they would prefer that or look at that pathway for their children. What's also astonishing is the 64% in terms of apprenticeships. 28% said very strongly agree, 29% said agree. So clearly indication that this whole movement about looking at skills training is very critical, especially as parents look at the value of education for their children. So other things that we looked at, and again, we started this study almost a year ago. But we looked at the Tucson economy, what we call the MAP dashboard. Again, this comes from the University of Arizona College of Management. Indicators were up at that time, but I want to focus just a minute on the graph on the right-hand side. And this was the total percentage change in growth rate. And this is from the Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity. So what you see here in terms of the largest change, if you look at and see post-secondary non-degree award, and then looking at associate's degree, so it's very clear that it's not just about degrees, it's just not about certificates, it's about those certifications and those credentials that are critical for moving forward, that are really taking place, and understandable. Students want those particular skills to upskill or reskill. And then we look at some social and economic trends, and from this perspective, looking at not only the degree outcomes in Arizona for two-year colleges in terms of success of white and Hispanic or Latino populations, but then the age cohort. I found this really interesting with respects to looking at the age cohort in the 2020 unemployment from the Arizona Department of Administration, Offices of Employment. And you can see right there very clearly the 25 to 34, the 35 to 44, and the 45 to 54 are all groups that had significant unemployment. So we started in 2015 with an educational master plan that said, Pima, you really need to start paying attention to the adult population. Those are the ones that need skilling, reskilling, upskilling. But again, don't lose sight of the transfer function, but there's a critical piece out there that really needs help.
Good afternoon. My name is Lauren Leedy, and I'm a principal and campus planner with Smith Group. Over the next series of slides, I'd like to share with you the regional population analytics that we completed as part of this mid-cycle review. And the first one that you see here on the screen is looking at population density. We wanted to revisit, understand how population is distributed throughout the Tucson region as part of this mid-cycle review. What we found is that the highest concentrations of population are located adjacent to the downtown campus as well as the Desert Vista campus. We also looked at population as it relates to ethnicity, using population data and mapping that with geographic information systems. And once again, we see that both the downtown campus and Desert Vista in particular are really strategically located to serve the most ethnically diverse populations. At the same time, we looked at population growth throughout the Tucson region, looking out over the next 5 and 10 years. Really see that there's continued growth to the north, located near the Northwest campus, as well as to the south, both the Southeast and Southwest, not far from the Desert Vista campus and also the East campus. At the same time, we tried to understand both community services and transit access. And one of the revelations that we found was just that the downtown campus continues to be very well served in terms of transit, as well as community services, retail options. There is an opportunity for those to be strengthened, and we know there's ongoing efforts that could help bolster these services, such as the Thrive in 05, that could potentially really shape the future of the downtown campus. So really all of this in summary is helping to understand the external trends that we feel will really provide opportunities and drive strategy for Pima Community College. Really thinking about how we can continue to better serve adult learners, non-traditional students, those that are unemployed or underserved. At the same time, thinking about how these can help us to strengthen our partnerships with industry and business, and at the same time also ensure that we're maintaining the quality and vitality of transfer degrees and articulation agreements. So with that, I'd like to pause and open it up for any questions or discussion.
Are there any questions from board members? Okay.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and start again. So this section is going to talk about the utilization and space needs analyses. So the first thing we did was to do a full counting of the space on the campus. So what you see here in these charts is figure 5.1 over to the far left accounts for the campuses, the centers, the district facilities. And you can see right there, we're talking about assignable square feet. So overall, 1,067,031 square feet when you add up all those facilities. Now, there's also several facilities either in design, construction, or nearing construction, and those are in the middle at the top, figure 5.2. So you see the Advanced Manufacturing Center and the assignable square feet, the Automotive Technology Center and the Aviation Tech Center. So all of those combined have total plan space of roughly 149,431 square feet. So now the hotel properties are still, looking at being determined in terms of their usability. And then, this study really doesn't take into account your most recent RFP on, buildings H&J for renovations for healthcare. So right now we have existing usable and planned space of 1,216,462 assignable square feet. And so now, when in 2015, when we did this accounting of space, there was 1,124,744 assignable square feet. So at the end, for these particular components, there'll be a net increase of a little over 91,000 square feet with the addition of the planned space by 2022. So this is a breakdown of space by what we call space category. And so you can see very clearly here that offices, teaching labs, classrooms, and social and study space comprise the largest components of Pima's overall space inventory. So, and you can see down at the bottom in terms of offices are roughly almost 185,000 square feet, 21% of the space, teaching labs, classrooms, and so forth. So when we look at this, this gives us an idea of, the comprehensiveness of not only how much space, but what category is it in. So the next few slides are going to talk a little bit about what we call classroom use and utilization. And I want to first preface this by saying that we have data for all the campuses, and in some cases the district and also the aviation center. Obviously, due to time and due to the amount of information. We simply can't portray all of this information in this particular study session. So the report does include pretty much all comprehensive components of Pima Community College, just like it did in 2015. So there's two graphs on this page. One to the left is Desert Vista campus. You'll see 6 graphs that are labeled Monday through Friday with an average of Monday through Friday. And what you're seeing in each one of those is the percent of classrooms in use at given times. So, if you look at Thursday at 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 11:30, you'll see there 100%. What that means is that during those times, Desert Vista had 10 classrooms, 100% of them were in use at that particular time. So if you want to try to schedule additional courses at that location during those times, obviously it's going to be very difficult. I should say that, and I failed to suggest that this is 2019 data. This is in essence what we call pre-COVID data, because obviously in March of 2020, the campus moved to 100% online instruction, and none of this would make any sense. So we looked at the last data where students were on campus. Now on figure 5.9 on the right-hand side of this graph was West Campus with 62 classrooms. And you can see some patterns emerging, especially in Monday and Tuesday, where you see 9, 10 o'clock, you see about 68% or more of the classrooms. It tapers off in the early afternoon for lunch. It picks up a little bit in the afternoon and then again trails off. So by 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock, you can begin to see that overall the classroom use is pretty light. What I want to point out is obviously on Friday, and you don't see a lot there, and that's in some cases typical of some institutions, not typical of others. But as Pima begins to really understand campus utilization and looking at this, obviously there's opportunities for scheduling of additional courses during not only Fridays but also evenings, some afternoons. What you see on the West Campus is that at no time are more than 71% of the classrooms in use at any given time. So again, there's opportunities for additional courses as the college moves forward. This is a summary at the district level of what we call classroom utilization. And we started classroom utilization at Pima Community College back in 1998. If you think about that, that's quite a ways back. And so the two numbers I'm going to talk about are what we call average weekly room hours. And that's simply the number of hours a week that a classroom is scheduled. And then student station occupancy. So when the room is scheduled, what percent of students are actually occupying seats in that particular room? Now, what we have on this side is analysis for 2001, which is over to the far left for each of the campuses. Now, the Northwest campus wasn't around at that time, so there is no data there. The campus had the district had 161 total rooms. The 2014 analysis is in the middle, and then the most recent analysis is on the far right-hand side. Now, the 2 red arrows that you see there are those 2 metrics that are most important. But if you scan across, in 1998, PCC had 142 classrooms. We're using them roughly 42 hours or 44 hours per week. Now, if you come back to the graphs that you see for the average in 2001, 40 hours a week. 2014, you can see average weekly room hours is 27, and our most recent analysis was 23 average hours per week. Now, we did the same thing for teaching labs. And again, we had information going back to 1998, where labs were used 35 hours per week. And you can see in 2001, 2014, and now in 2019. So how in 2001, we had 33 hours a week, 71% of the seats or stations in the lab were occupied. That maintained a pretty consistent level in 2014. That's great. And then 2019, you'll see a little bit tapering where the red arrows are. Right now, before, again, pre-COVID, the labs were being used roughly 24 hours a week at about 68% student station occupancy. So this is really a summary of, when you look at 2015 and 2019, and again, we stopped right before COVID, in terms of the building assignable square feet, between 15 and 19. And it shows a slight decline because the other buildings that are planned are not quite online yet when we started this study. So we can count those as they come online, but as of 2019, those facilities were still under construction. We also look at term FTE between 15 and 19, roughly a 10% decline. And the third box, the bullets over, or the circles, talks about assignable square feet per footsie. And so when you divide the building in assignable square feet by the term footsie, you come up with a number. And in this case, 83.4 assignable square feet per FTE in 2015, going up to 87.7 assignable square feet per footsie, roughly an increase of 5%. Now, I want to add just a little bit of context to that because, Pima Community College is in the process of going to centers of excellence pathways. And so also, looking at more technical types of programs and workforce programs. So when you look at that, from a benchmarking perspective, we do quite a bit of this in our business. And so if you look at North Carolina with roughly almost 20 million square feet of space, their number is roughly 147.8 assignable square feet per FTE. And they have quite a bit of technical colleges. In Louisiana, they also have a community and technical college system. They have 6 technical colleges and 6 community colleges. They have roughly 150.6 assignable square feet per FTE. Now, in state of Washington, 32 or 34 two-year institutions, 5 are technical. They're roughly 120.5 assignable square feet per FTE. That was based on a 2019 statewide study. So the numbers that you're seeing here, the 83.4 going to 87.7, are understandable given that, again, we're pivoting to centers of excellence. We're also, trying to augment that with also space for workforce development and strategic partnership programs. So you're going to see, some additional space go in that area. But then lastly, on the far right, classroom efficiency, 74% going down to 60%, really for 2 reasons. Enrollment decline, and then second, because more and more of the courses at Pima have shifted to a Pima Online or a hybrid platform, overall reducing the needs in those particular areas. So this is the space needs analysis for, and again, it's at a high level. And so what you see here, I'll just give you the sort of the high level overview of this. The green is the guideline, the blue is existing. You look at the chart on the left-hand side, but overall, you can see right here that right now the college is sitting on roughly about 136,000 assignable square feet of what we call excess capacity. And just to put that in a frame of reference, Northwest Campus has about 49,000 assignable square feet of space. So it's almost the equivalent of a campus. So I also want to put into perspective very quickly, I know there's a lot on this chart, but one of the biggest space surpluses in office space. And if you follow me on the left-hand side, it says average office. There are over 800 offices between the district and downtown. And you can see the average size of those offices, the minimum, maximum size. Now, one of the things that you can see below that is an open office of 64 square feet and a private office of 120. And so from that perspective, it probably doesn't make sense to try to reduce 800 offices to fit guidelines. And so really your space saving is really not within individual offices. Now, up at the top there with the sort of the multicolored diagram in the center of the page, what you see there is Pima's one-stop concept that was developed in 1997. And so, and I was working with a firm that actually developed that. On the right-hand side at the top, you'll see that the space needs for that one-stop center. And from that perspective, roughly 12,000 square feet for about 10,000 students. So it's a factor of what we call 1.2 ASF per student. Now let's jump down to the bottom in the center of the page. And this happens to be the one-stop center for Desert Vista campus. And so when you look at this and when you take all these factors, PCC was on the cutting edge with one-stop centers when they were first developed, and this was a they've implemented in 1999, 2000. And so it had a variety of self-service and high-touch components with offices around it. I believe it's still there, it's still functional. But what that center was designed for was an enrollment of roughly 9,000 students. You can do the math. And so it's about 8,200 square feet. And so that gives you an idea of the comprehensiveness of that space. But in fall 19, there were only about 3,100, a little bit more than 3,100 students at the Desert Vista campus. So if we look at space savings, that's certainly one area that we can look at. And then the chart on the lower right-hand side, where you see the red line, the pandemic has forced us to really begin to think about how the extensiveness of web-based virtual services, student in-person transactions, one-stop. And so as we move forward, as Pima really gets involved in some of this, it's really going to be clear that the virtual services of many offerings, within the district of offering, virtual components of student services could also continue to dive into this space. So I'll leave it at that and say that, these things obviously are all critically important, but you start to see how all these different things come into play. So I think we'll wrap it up with the next slide and then look at any discussion questions. So you can see in terms of the space surplus for fall of 2019, as I said, all that space is not continuous. All of it may not be available for reuse. I think that there's opportunities for greater space efficiencies, but there's cost with that. And usually it's because you have to either move people or instruction and recoup those particular spaces. In some cases, the costs really don't outweigh the benefits, and you're going to have new facilities. And so you can see here in the other bullets in terms of, space surpluses, don't say that you don't need funding for capital projects as you look at 21st century learning. And then, as I said before, that fourth or fifth bullet, the move to centers of excellence, workforce integration is a more space intensive model, requires new types of space. And then also looking at centers of excellence in terms of being campus-based, building specific. I think anytime you look at space surplus, you have to look at the repurposing of space in terms of capacity, trends, processes, and functionality. With that, I'll leave that this section and answer any questions that may arise.
Are there any members from the board? Okay, it looks like Mr. Ward has a comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair Klinko. I just wanted to let the board know and others that are on here, it's kind of like Frank said, related to the space. I mean, we can look at it as if it's an overage in space, or we can look at this as it's an opportunity for us to do other things. And so as you guys, as those of you may know, is when we look at this plan in 2015 and we looked at the space that we had, that was why we ended up going out for our revenue bond after the plan was approved to come and build additional new space, because the space that we have in place really didn't support the programs. And I think just like with the train presentation, we talked about where we are with our BCT group and what they had. And so what I would say to the board is this is also, in other words, there are also opportunities here for partnerships, leases, or for us to develop more maker space and things like that. And these are things that, we've not asked the planning team to kind of look at this. These are things that myself, Dave, Dolores, the chancellor, and others are looking at internally to see, as things move forward, what we can do with this excess. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ward. Are there any other comments? Okay.
One additional piece that we want to highlight that was part of the mid-cycle review was the educational adequacy assessment that we completed. So this was a comprehensive look at classroom space to really understand its educational quality. We looked at all 5 campus locations and the 3 learning centers, and based it on an EDUCAUSE national rating criteria, looking at technology, what's accessible and available within the room and its condition, as well as the physical environment itself, looking at things like its environmental quality related to lighting, views, thinking about layout and furnishings, and also general condition. And I think really all of this together is to help you really focus any reinvestment, repurposing efforts, as we found and compiled in this overall dashboard, really understanding and providing detail on where sort of each campus fell within the rating system, as well as looking at down to actually classroom levels. So you can look and see at each criteria how those classrooms were evaluated. And in many cases, what we found, I think consistently, the rooms that were more heavily utilized per Frank's evaluation of space utilization were also those that scored the highest in terms of the educational adequacy rankings.
Yeah, Lauren, I'd like to also weigh in on that too, is
Please.
when we did this assessment related to utilization and space in general, we wanted to take a hard look at kind of, how are we delivering education now? And what does it look like? And I think Board Member Ripley brought this up earlier about how are we going to deliver it in the future? And so we wanted to take a really hard look at these different spaces, because I will tell you, a lot of our space was developed a long time ago. A lot of it really, in my opinion, was not, respect. In other words, it didn't do what we needed related to the programs that Dolores and Dave and others have. And so this helps us kind of take a hard look. This helps us also develop some strong standards as we move forward with remodeling and design and stuff like that. Because in the past, a lot of times we would develop space and it wasn't adequate for what we really need it for and how things, in a sense, work today.
Okay, so are there any other questions for the board at this point? Okay. Do you guys want to continue, or is this?
I have a comment question.
Yeah. Oh, yes, Ms. Ripley. I'm sorry, I can't quite see everybody. And then I moved to look and yes, Ms. Ripley.
I have my hand out. I follow the rules.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so far. I know we're running short on time, but yeah, I want to, there's a lot of data here and there's a lot of work done by the Smith group, a lot of data analysis. And I think and we're going to have a board retreat next month, but I think there's a lot that we have to soak in, because what happened pre-COVID and what's going to happen post-COVID, we can't look at the facilities in a vacuum, because I think all bets are off. I mean, there's a chance that there'll be more online and they'll stay online because they like it, but there's also a chance that people are hungry to get back in the classroom. So before, getting rid of this space, I would like to take a better look at reallocating it, repurposing it. I like the idea of leasing. That could be a nice short-term fix as well. But there's a lot of ideas and a lot of brainstorming, and I think a lot of creativity that's got to go into looking at our spaces. And like I said, I think there's a lot that we can't assume as we're in the weird transition period. And before we make any hasty decisions and shift paradigms on how we approach Pima Community College and its future, I think we need to settle and really look at this data before we make any firm decisions on what to do with this 136,000, I'm bad at numbers, possibly excess surplus space. We have beautiful campuses. We have beautiful classrooms. I taught, and I think students are going to come no matter what if they really want to come. I don't think they're going to care if the building's ugly or if there's no grass in the lawn, which we shouldn't have anyway because we're in a drought. But I think that being wise about it and not just looking at the campuses and the buildings themselves, but really I'm going to preach on this, but go back to recruitment and retention and enrollment and getting those, so-called butts in seats and making it attractive, not by beautiful campuses, because I think our campuses are beautiful, but I think by making the curriculum and you really making the centers of excellence, as well as our traditional 2-year liberal arts offerings much more attractive and kind of getting over the stigma of if there still exists a stigma of community college. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ripley. Dr. Doré.
Yes, I just wanted to, on the space issue too, I just wanted to provide just a little bit of context as an example. Our automotive technology center space right now is 11,000 square feet. And in this new facility, it'll be 47,000 square feet, which actually points to less efficiency on a space perspective, but this is the right kind of space and then aligns to national best practice. So I just wanted to give that perspective.
That's true.
And could the group I know you've alluded to it in the past, but sort of the center focus on sort of the downtown campus and the West Campus is sort of like the two major hubs within the system. And there seems to be sort of a continual migration as we move programs to the downtown campus. And we've made some of these key other sort of high value strategic investments into the West Campus. We seem to be moving in that direction. Could you just sort of talk a little bit about that?
I guess we have slides that talk a little bit about that if we want to move forward. So we can certainly discuss that as well.
Sure.
So over the next series of slides, it does begin to speak to those draft strategies and recommendations, and beginning really looking district-wide. So this first set looks at a little bit holistically at the district and the different strategies and recommendations, beginning really about thinking about the future. What is that post-COVID environment? We saw obviously pre-COVID, it was mainly bricks and mortar, students in person, then obviously shifted to this all virtual environment. And now what we're seeing and hearing from students is really a desire for a mixture of the two. And in many ways, I think when those students that would be back on campus wanting a very collaborative, interactive, engaging experience. And so what we're beginning to see in the trends and the emerging spaces in what we're calling a networked or hybrid campus are these spaces that really allow for a lot increased flexibility. Thinking about new types of spaces like maker spaces or innovation hubs, thinking about increased technology throughout those spaces, and also a shift and a real focus on expanding the student services and even academic support offerings on campus in person as well. And so to kind of reference back to the slides that you saw Frank share earlier, we do feel like there's an opportunity to really think about how you could repurpose some of this surplus space. And at the same time, even think about potentially reducing your physical capacity as it relates to your lease spaces, and even rethinking the opportunities for the district office.
So this is where we talk a little bit about what we call resource realignment. And so we went back and looked at statewide policy, site designation policies for a number of states. And what typically happens is that each state has some type of I guess you can say understanding with colleges of you have to reach a certain size before you're either classified as an instructional site, a campus, a branch campus, and so forth. So we pulled two of them that we were very familiar with because of our work, and especially in the policy area. And you can see in Indiana and Florida, you really can't be a campus unless you have at least 500 footsie. In Florida, it's 1,000 footsie. If you want to be a center, well, then you have to have at least 100 footsie in Indiana and a little bit less than 1,000 in Florida. So instructional sites could be learning centers or lease facilities in those two states. So in essence, Arizona doesn't have this type of designation policies that limit to say, you could open up, 10 different sites and call them campuses. And, there's really not anything that says you couldn't do that. So, but it's more than just that. It's really looking at, the goal to reduce duplication of resources and space. You have 5, in essence, campuses. And so we also understand that, digital learning, virtual student services are also reducing the need for robust resources on each of your campuses. So there are a series of recommended strategies about strengthening downtown and west, continuing to build programs and support services at Desert Vista. And like I talked about in the space needs section, looking at streamlining or consolidating key student service academic support functions at other campuses. But then looking at Northwest and East campuses, especially with regard to first of all, the potential impact on grant opportunities, but looking at potentially delivering services in a virtual format or during peak periods of demand. There are other ways to obviously deliver student and academic support services. But like I said, the college will need to assess campus designations, look at possible impacts, and really do a thorough feasibility study before they move in this direction. And then the other component that we did quite a bit on is the district office research and benchmarks. And we certainly did our due diligence in this area. So we reviewed a lot of national studies, looked at the advantages and disadvantages of centralized and autonomous administrative structures. We looked at the current district location, not only now, but in 2015, operational efficiency, ability to serve for the long term. But then we did a benchmark of 5 large multi-campus districts. And you can see here in the third bullet in terms of, district offices were autonomous, embedded within the fabric of a downtown community, the oldest campus or the district's largest campus. So what we did is, we looked at what key positions would need to be around the chancellor, and then that, in essence, about 200 individuals or offices. And then the rest of those could be rebalanced to campus location.
And I think in the essence of time, we thought it might make sense to jump to kind of our final chapter. If Chairman Klinko, you agree, and then we can open up to questions.
That sounds terrific.
Okay,
right.
Just a moment. So Doug, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, well, we want to thank you, board members, again, for creating time this afternoon to talk about this. You have this content, and although we skipped several slides, I think, to Lauren and Frank's point, it would be nice to leave you with a clear and succinct set of ideas for you to consider. And we will walk through each of your different assets in the next couple minutes, beginning with the downtown campus. And just for consistency, you'll note that the colored squares on the left are opportunities for change, draft recommendations for your consideration, and the graphic on the right is a representation of the migration strategy. So the downtown campus presents some wonderful opportunities for you to consider, beginning with the establishment of the IRSRC, which is an equity, diversity, and inclusivity program. It also offers opportunities for dual enrollment space you already have and creation of a Pima County one-stop. Across the bottom on the left, you can see that, as Frank mentioned, we believe the downtown footprint is an ideal candidate for the relocation of the administrative functions of your downtown administrative office space. That's represented in the dotted line on the graphic on the right. Finally, teaching and learning center and social services can be expanded within this existing footprint. These are powerful recommendations. As we pivot to the West Campus, I want to just highlight some of the top line recommendations, beginning with collaboration space for your health partners, third-party folks that allow your students to gain access to that in concert with your health services building that we've been talking about, makerspace, and the development of a center for excellence in the arts. Wonderful opportunities for you to consider. And again, across the bottom are some other opportunities to use the space you have on campus differently for the creation of these different opportunities. The last few are equally as exciting and powerful. The East Campus has the opportunity to absorb some of the assets at 29th Street Center, in particular the public safety space as a center of excellence. Short-term opportunities highlighted include some renovated space. Longer-term views, should you migrate in this direction, include a larger suite of tools to create a full public safety center of excellence. Also, doubling back on the Center of Excellence in IT on these campuses, again, a great opportunity for your consideration. And the last two, also equally as important, Desert Vista, wonderful campus, has a real opportunity for some very tactical and low-hanging, easy to implement improvements, beginning with partnerships for early college, interdisciplinary labs for your students, enhancing the Hospitality and Tourism Center of Excellence, and Adult Basic Education Center. So again, these are really serving the need of this part of the Valley. And finally, to conclude our narrative this afternoon, is the Northwest Campus. three things to take away from this as opportunities. First, we believe some of the back of house operations that are located in the district office could be migrated to the Northwest campus to use some of the space that Frank mentioned. And finally, we believe it could be a home for Pima Online and wonderful partnership for your four-year partners across the state and the region. So that is a whirlwind tour this afternoon of our draft recommendations and thoughts for your critique. We have several things to do highlighted on the screen. In summary, they are simple. We will continue to seek stakeholder input, your critique and counsel, and come back later this spring with additional finalizations for your plan. Thank you for your attention to this. And Chairman, I'll turn the microphone and the conversation back to your board members.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the comprehensive overview and the recommendations. Are there any comments or questions from the board members? Okay, it doesn't look like there are. So I really just want to thank you for, again, a very comprehensive evaluation, of our assets and, how we can better align and serve our students. I think because of the shortness of time, and that we've actually lost two of our board members because they had other meetings that they had to move to at the end. I think what would be great is if people could send any comments or work with the Chancellor's office to get you any additional comments or thoughts on the plan as you are sort of moving through your process. And Chancellor Lambert, in terms of our formal adoption of this plan, what is the next steps as we sort of see a final product?
So Damien, we're probably looking at June at the latest.
Okay.
Is when we would bring this to you. We're balancing that with a number of items that we need to bring next month. So trying to, but I do want to respond to a comment that Kat made. So it is not my intention to recommend getting rid of any of our facilities. I've been consistent with that for many, many years. And so I think we can partner, we can reuse, we can leverage what we have. So that's the approach I would be continuing to advocate for.
And a key component of that, Chancellor Lambert, that I heard was a reduction of or a modification of the type of in-person services that are provided at each of the campus, moving more to the virtual peak hours and providing a more nuanced approach to be able to stretch our resources further and still provide the same level of service to our students. So, I mean, I did hear that correctly.
That's correct. You did hear that correctly.
Yeah. I think really getting, I think as part of this, maybe having a little bit I'm sure that will be, part of the discussion, but I think having a little bit of understanding about sort of how we vision that occurring over time, because we certainly know, just from this experience of the last year, that there is a receptivity to virtual services, and we have been able to meet that high level of quality without having in person at every location all the time. So I think using the lessons that we've learned from the COVID year in this new model, I think will be really helpful. Board Member Ripley, and then Mr. Ward.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. That was excellent. And I think that this is moving along beautifully. We had a study session on enrollment and recruitment, which scratched the surface of what we need to do. And I think this takes it to the next step as far as facilities and education master plan. But I think that it's important to just keep in mind, the demographic in the community for which we serve, and keeping that. I want to remind everybody that Pima Community College is the most affordable and perhaps the only way, in the spirit of diversity, inclusion, and equity, that a large demographic of our community will ever get not just education and training in getting jobs, but a liberal arts degree and, basically an educated citizenry. So I think I love how we're building on this concept with this master plan. So thank you.
Mr. Ward, and then our Provost, Dolores Flaren-Certa.
Chair Klinko and Chancellor, board members, I wanted to tie into what the Chancellor said about space. One thing to remember too is it makes my job a lot easier when there is more space that we can, as all this construction and things that we're doing gives us the opportunity to move people around. And so when you have excess space, then we're able to move people around as we transition into these newer facilities or remodeled facilities. So I just wanted to put that on the table. I mean, it does help us as we go down this path that we're going.
Provost, and then Dr. Doré.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson Klinko. I just wanted to reiterate that COVID has really opened up the fact that our students need more flexibility because they're working, because they have their families, because of many components. So we're responding to the students' needs. And as I've said many times before, we need to be student ready rather than expect the students to be college ready. So that flexibility in offering options, we have many students who desire to be in the classroom face-to-face with their instructor, and they need that guidance and that face-to-face interaction. But we also have students who really enjoy hybrid, doing a little bit of both, and then yet others virtual and online. So we will make sure to provide all those options for our students as we move forward. Thank you.
Well, that's terrific to hear. And Dr. Doré?
Yeah, and Chair Klinko, I think to your point, we've learned so much from the pandemic about quality service, and it is our intention to offer higher quality service moving forward post-pandemic. And I think, you know, the challenge I put out to my team is we don't want students ever having to stand in lines again. So we actually want to leverage what we've learned in terms of virtual services.
Well, we really appreciate it. And again, we really appreciate the work that you did in 2015 has really helped guide the last 6 years for this institution and has really helped us provide a very clear focus, not only for this board, but for our community in providing this high quality service to students. So we are really appreciative of the work that you're doing. And we look forward to seeing the final document. And again, if any of the board members have questions, they should just contact and go through the Chancellor's office to get them to the Smith Group. Okay, and with that, since I don't see any other questions, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, bye now.